Hello and welcome to the channel. Now today I wanted to discuss some very interesting watches that I've been following recently, and this is mainly to do with a La Chaux de Fonds based watchmaker who was signing Louis Montandon Geneva, and this is Louis Auguste Montandon, and he was fabricating certainly by the 1840s, probably before then, and we find him in Davos and Almanacs from 1841 up until 1870. And so we do find a lot of these watches by him. Now, he preceded other Louis Montandons that were fabricating in nearby Locla. And he was more or less on the scene about 15 to 20 years, almost a generation before El Montandon Locla watches appear. And we see them starting to appear at the end of the 1850s. So we do have Louis Montandon Geneva watches. And now this same individual was most probably also signing certain watches La Chaux de Fonds. And this may have been depending upon the type of clients that he had. Perhaps this was a selling point. It's not exactly clear based on the evidence. However, these all seem to be related to his production. And when we are following his serial numbers, they generally, documented watches by him generally are between the 5,000 and 24,000 range. But the largest group of these watches are in the tens and the teens, thousands, 10,000, 11, 12, 17, etc., 15. So we have this, these are generally all part of a ledger system where the serial number was also replicating an invoice number to the customer. And this was helping them with their bookkeeping. They would have the movements stamped with this various series upon their request. They were not providing their own movements. If they were subcontracting, they would have the subcontractor stamped within this nomenclature for their bookkeeping. Now, a very fascinating object has appeared, and this is now a watch which is gold, or at least gold plated, signed Henry Montandon Geneva. And this is very close in fabrication style and period. And the watch, the dating of the watch does fall into this early 1850s period. And this is very fascinating. Now, this watch has a serial number which fits extremely closely into these Louis Montandon pieces. Now, this is in the 16,000, I believe, or rather 12,000, 12,625, the serial number. Now, this piece is a beautiful piece, and I would like to thank the owner for providing permission to utilize his watch pictures. And the owner, Dan, I would like to thank him personally. He's a very nice guy, and his watch is the only watch signed Henry Montandon Geneva from this period, this early 1850s period, that I have been able to locate. But it is very interesting because I believe that this is Charles Henry Montandon. Now, he is the son of Louis Auguste, who was fabricating from La Chaux de Fonds, and indeed, they were fabricating at the same location for many years in the early 1850s, right at this period. And it is very probable, and most probable, that indeed they were either in some very close collaboration, if not in the same company, selling their productions. Now, they would have been signing, obviously they would be able to sign under their own names. This was a little bit of a prestige factor, but it is interesting that the serial numbers overlap. They're totally, so they were probably utilizing the same part suppliers, if not the same producer elements. So all of these factors sort of align, the dating wise and architecturally, the watches themselves. But this is just a beautiful watch with this golden colored dial. this metallic dial, and uh, it does appear that this is the son of Louis Montandon. This is Henry Montandon. Actually, his full name was Charles Henry, but he went by Henry. And he would later move to other locations, and they were probably operating several different premises. One may have been more of a atelier or fabrication spot. However, they could have also been selling from their own businesses. This is not exactly clear, but it does appear that these are related. So I did want to represent this. Now, there are additional other factors that I wanted to share today with watches of this period, this mid 19th century. Now, I did notice a very interesting watch that is signed Patek and Compagnie, Geneva. And it appears to date from this period. This is certainly between this 1840 1850 period. And indeed, uh, the company did was reorganized several times around this period, including from 19 or rather 1845 to 1850. And at that time, the company was not Patek Philippe, but Patek and Co. or and Company, and they were based in Geneva. So this is very interesting because now this piece has been by one individual ascribed to be a fake. Yet one wonders when the watch does appear to be technologically speaking and art, the actual elements of the watch do appear to be circa this 1845 to 1850 period. And I am not a Patek expert. I am not sure at what point they became very famous. However, this was still rather early in the company's period. They had been reorganized several times. Indeed, I believe their foundation uh, wasn't too many years before this, so they were a relatively new company. And at this point, I do believe that that watch is very potentially one of their earlier models before they became very famous for the high quality that they would come to be known as after they reorganized, perhaps, I believe this is already a third time, this Patek Philippe. Uh, so this is quite interesting, and I have prompted the uh, owner, Mike, and thank you for presenting the permission to use your images. But I have prompted him to contact the Patek Philippe Museum in Geneva and to make an inquiry on this watch. Now, this is a brand that became so popular that it would fall victim to counterfeit counterfeiters that were passing off fakes. And indeed, later on, towards the end of the 19th century, this became very famous. Now, I have in my hand, this is a counterfeit Patek watch. This is spelled Patek, Patek, Patek Genève. And these watches were fabricated by Armand Schwab, and I believe they were also called Schwab Frères. But this was prosecuted. They had produced almost 1,000 of these watches, and they were actually ordered to pay fines, penalties for this, for every single watch that they counterfeited. This was not very. This was not enough to stop these counterfeiters from doing so. He continued to do uh, various different forgeries after this. It was very lucrative. So, so this is certainly a a proven forgery that we know. There is historical documentation behind this variety of counterfeiting where the name was spelled Patek Cie and not K, so that this has been substantiated. However, I still hold that it is quite possible for, in the case of this Patek and Co. or a Patek and Compagnie, CIE abbreviation, Geneva. This may be one of their earlier ones. However, clearly I'm not a Patek specialist, and I hope that the owner, Mike, is able to get some interesting information regarding his watch, because this was a family heirloom passed down many, many generations. And there's definitely a story behind this watch in any event. Yet, I think it's for so-called experts to be making judgments just to say something is fake and not provide any substantiation. For example, that the watch was never, the company never signed in this fashion, for example, or um, certain bona fide solid arguments or basis for this type of determination. That this is something that should be probed a little bit further. And indeed, we are constantly tasked with being as careful as possible. Certainly, we are making assumptions in many cases. Yet, when we make these assumptions, we more or less are saying that this is based on the available evidence. It does appear that this is the case, etc. And in general, this is how it goes. So I just wanted to share uh, this interesting mid 19th century uh, watchmaking family, this Louis Montandon Geneva signed piece with his son Henry Geneva, Henry Montandon Geneva, which is the only item that I have seen signed this early using that. Now, there were other Henry Montandons signing Geneva also. This was much later. This was after Charles Henry had actually retired from watchmaking. Indeed, he would go on to a political career. His father had also been in politics on and had watchmaking on as a side hustle, basically. But this is a very common name, this Henry Montandon. We find many of them. Indeed, in La Chaux de Fonds, there was a Napoleonic era watchmaker, Swiss watchmaker, Henri Montandon. He became quite famous. He was indeed known for watchmaking uh, as during the Napoleonic era. He was doing the watches. He continued to do the watches up until perhaps the 1830s. It's not exactly clear when he stopped producing or stopped the functioning of his atelier. We don't see watch information in his journals that he kept. There was a family journal that he kept that went beyond his death. His wife completed this after he died. So this ran into the 1860s. He was born in 1779. So once again, very slight outlying possibility that Henri Montandon of La Chaux de Fonds, who was a judge, he was also a judge, an appellate judge. This very, very slightly possibly could be one of his later models. This would not have been by his hand. This would have been by somebody under his atelier, more likely. However, uh, it does exist as a possibility, so it's worth stating it. And indeed, he was quite famous for his watchmaking. He did acquire the old watch atelier of the Huguenon friars, the main Huguenon, who was the inspector general for watchmaking for the King of Prussia. This was this was La Belle Maison, a historic edifice. This was a former lodge and a Masonic lodge and an inn where people stayed, etc. That dated back to the 18th century, so mid 18th century. So has a very interesting story behind this building. But Henri Montandon, the watchmaker and judge, came into this through his wife's side. So he was a factor in that community making watches, and we do not know how he signed his watches. Did he sign them La Chaux de Fonds, Geneva, Locle, or at all? It's simply not information we possess at this time. There's not enough data to substantiate any claims towards how he signed his watches. But this was just a very impromptu video to discuss these curious mid-19th century watchmakers and to show these two examples to demonstrate their proximity with the serial numbers and their fabrication styles, and basically to share the information with you. So I hope that you found this useful. And if you have any feedback or comments or indeed anything you'd like to add. I look forward for your comments in the below the video. But have a nice weekend and thank you for your attention. Bye bye.